welcome back to another Fight the Dragon level editor tutorial. Last time kind of went over props in terms of the interactive props. This time I'm gonna cover the static props, which is what I was hoping to last time, but ran out of time for. So here is the gist of it. So for the static props, pretty much it's all in the name. They're static. You place them, they're there. They have collisions. It's just objects that are in to add aesthetic appeal or effects or lighting. But they're pretty much just sprucing up your level, make it feel more lived in, more plausible than just a bunch of blocks lying around everywhere. So let's take a quick look through all of the different selections categories. We have crystals, which are mini light sources. They aren't huge light sources, so don't become too reliant on them, but they're great for using in caves. They make caves feel very cave-esque with the stalagmites kind of feel, plus with glowing rocks. Just feels a little bit more natural, makes you feel like you're underground. You got decorations, which are pretty much outside decorations, things to make spaces look more lived in. Exterior, which are once again things to kind of go on the outside of buildings. They kind of go hand in hand with the decorations. You got the facades, which are false objects, if you will. So like there's doors that you can't interact with. They aren't teleporters, you can't go through them. They're just there to appear like a door, but they don't act like a door. There's also windows. I'll get back to the windows because those are pretty important to make a block look like a building. Then you've got graveyard. This is where you'll find like your corpses, your tombstones, your crypts. You can actually place a dead body of each of the NPCs. So you can go through and place a dead NPC and then switch it between the different variations in NPCs that you can have in the world. Then you can have hanging, which are primarily flags and some signs. Then you've got your interior, which is more of like what would go on the inside of houses. You've got your lights, which would be things that are either hanging on the inside or hanging off a wall on the outside, or just a source of light in general. These are much better than the crystals for light sources. They cover a much wider radius. Very helpful. Then you got mines. It's anything that you typically find in a mine. Once again, goes great for underground feeling. Then you've got your pillars, which are very good for like cathedral feeling areas, or ruins or stuff like that. Then you've got rocks, which are just your basic stone boulders, stuff like that you typically find in a field. Then you've got your statues, which are the large body statues. They got a ton of different stuff. Then you've got structural. A lot of this is primarily walls, like fences and whatnot, which I'll get back to and cover because those can be quite helpful, but there's kind of a trick to using them. And then there's trees. It's all your different vegetation and whatnot. So let's go back to the facade and cover windows real quick, because we've got our door here. We might as well have a window. So as you can see, the window actually is placed on a pre-existing block. And as you can see, I'm rotating it with the left and right bumpers. Right bumper rotates at 90 degrees. Clockwise, left bumper rotates it counterclockwise. And what I have to do here is I'm going to place it by pressing A, and then I can cycle through the variants by continually pressing A, and I can kind of pick the one I want. So let's go with these. I like these. So then from here, they're kind of high up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the left trigger. One more time. Alright. So by tapping the left or right trigger changes the elevation of these windows. Let me get the same one here. So we can adjust how high up they are. Now there is a second type of window, which is a second story window, which can be placed higher than other windows can. So this block isn't quite high enough. Let me see if I can't raise it up a bit. So the idea of second story windows is that you can in turn add a second level of windows on top of other windows. So let's see if I can't get it to work. Static. Let's lower these once again. Facade, second story windows. It's still not wanting to work how it is. Anyways, so the idea is that you can place them above other windows. It's being finicky for some reason, but that is the gist of them. That's how it's supposed to work. They may have an issue with the recent patch. That's how it's worked in previous variations. They might have changed something that I'm unaware of. So if I figure that out, I will either add it to the comment section below, or I will make another video covering specifically the second story windows. Anyways, so let's move on from windows. So you can use those to place them outside as well as inside to kind of match the decor. So let me quickly let's go in here. Alright, so there we go. Now it looks the same on the outside as it does on the inside. Matches up the lines pretty well. So then we've got some other stuff to play with. We've got stuff like wells. We've got wells for different environments, so like ones that are snowed on, or ones that don't have like an actual pulley on them to draw up the water. And so yeah, this is just stuff that you can kind of decorate your level with. Let's see, I was going to go over the NPC corpses. So when you choose this NPC corpse, you pretty much just pick a location and you can rotate it however you want, and then by pressing A you can go through the variants and select each, or specifically which NPC corpse you want. However, you cannot really decide how the body lays other than just the rotation. Some are face down, others are on their back. It's dependent on which NPC you select, but there is no real control over that. So moving on from there, you've got hanging, which won't really touch on. The interior is something that I kind of want to go over. So this is one of the things that you can kind of layer a bit more. Once again, it's like the windows. You have to place them, and from there you have to like rotate them on how they rest. And once again, you have the variants, so you can cycle through them. Let me go through now and select the bookshelf. So as you can see, you can't hang them above other objects that are already hanging off the wall, but you can, however, place them above other objects that you place on the floor because they are hanging. So say that's too big. Let's find a bed, fancy bed. There we go. Actually, let's do one that hugs the wall a little bit more. There we go, bunk bed. So as you can see, I've got these hanging objects on the wall right where the bunk bed is actually at. And as you can see, like, you get some clipping if you don't layer them right. You can always have them clip into one another, which is kind of a cheap way to do corners. However, you can do variants where like one's empty. It looks a lot better than having two objects clipping into one another. But that way you can actually decorate above other objects that you've placed inside your house or outside if you wanted to, where the space isn't taken up by something that you place under it because you specifically hang it off the wall, which is pretty helpful because you can make an interior with very limited space feel very full, which is pretty nice. It's one of the things that I really like about the engine. It has good set design. And then as well, you can also add hanging objects on top of that. So you can't place them where you have, once again, something on the floor, but you can place them above open spots. And that can help with like lighting and whatnot. So by adding the chandelier in, it's a light source, as well as it just kind of shows that you are on the interior. It is that, it is what you typically expect to see when you walk into a house, kind of thing. Definitely makes it feel more homey. So mines, once again, that's more of an underground thing. You can use any of this as you see fit to, like, make it feel more lived in. Like, usually I'll use, like, these empty, like, grain sacks to make it feel a little bit more natural. Like, there's these bags of, like, grain or minerals or whatever. Usually, like, you can make a little, like, blacksmith area using it and, like, the pile of rubble be, like, raw ore material. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff has multiple variants to it. So, like, you can see these have, like, pickaxe or the one without the pickaxe. So even if it's not meant for something, you can always use it and make it look like it belongs there. So, like, a lot of these models are pretty nice. You can use them in a wide variety of ways. So once again, statues. So the other big thing that I wanted to cover before we finish up here is the different structural objects. So what I like to do specifically for the houses is use these roof beams to kind of give the feeling that, like, okay, there is a roof there, you just can't see it, it's part of the blocks, but they hang above. And the nice thing about these is, once again, since the teleporters are not hanging off the door, that these roof beams can actually hang above them. So it's another instance where you can kind of layer things on top of one another and get away with it, and just make it look real clean and good in the end. The other big thing that I wanted to touch on here, though, before we go, is the walls. So with these walls, typically a lot of people like to use them with gates. The trick to these is that you can't put some of these next to each other like this, where they have the blocks on double ends, unless you align it in the right way. But even then, like, you'll get around part circle and it won't let you connect it because of how you might have oriented it on the other side. And that's where these pieces come in, where they have the kind of the column in the center versus on the ends, where they fit it a lot better, allowing you to kind of make those odd turns that you wouldn't be able to do if you started building the wall in two different directions from the connection pieces. And as you can see, you can use them to merge nicely into other objects here. Let's finish gating this off just a little bit more. It's kind of in the way. So, as you can see, now we have this gate kind of going around. So now, when we go to play it, you actually have to go through the gate. Now granted, I kind of have an odd space here where you can sneak through. Typically, what I would do is I would end up having this lowered, but I got this destructible object in the way. So the other thing I could do is just wrap it around a little bit more, which I think I'm going to do here. Oops. But yeah, so aside from that, like, you do have to kind of watch it with some of this fencing, just because certain pieces do require like a minimum of 3 spaces to be able to place it, which can be a hefty requirement if you're kind of limited on the tiles that you can use or the spacing that you've allowed yourself. So kind of keep that in mind. Try to do the fences fairly early on, simply for that matter. That way you don't run into issues of running out of blocks and not being able to later on when you really need to kind of fill it in and then have to go back and redo a lot just to make it fit. So that's kind of like my big warning for these walls on structures. As you can see, like, now I can kind of have it hanging off the edge and whatnot because it doesn't actually loop around and connect back in. But aside from that, don't have a lot of other stuff. Bridges are where you connect them from one object all the way across. Let's see if I can get this to work. So like so, and it just creates a bridge. The nice thing about this is it can go over blocks, over block flooring, or underneath it. So like right here, I can get it to go underneath it, which is pretty nice because then you can kind of use these elevated blocks as tunnels. Other than that, you have steps, which are just as they say, they're steps. Let me see. Let's see here. So with the steps, you have to get it at 2 different elevations. Cooperative. I can cover that at a later time. But so pretty much steps are kind of a way to get around having 2 different elevations and getting up to a certain object. Another way is through ladders. Decals are like blood splatters or certain symbols where they're just aesthetic. They don't mean anything like the checkpoints do, but they do add like that aesthetic appeal to the level. Spawners are actually enemy spawners, so they're crypts that you place down and they will continue spawning enemies until you end up destroying the spawner itself, and then effects are just particle effects that you place in the world, and you can turn those on and off through the logic. You can really use these to like make an environment feel very much how you want it to. So like if there's a battle, you can do a ton of smoke and fire and whatnot, or if it's a misty or mysterious cave or whatever, you can do a lot of like fog particle effects or dust particles and whatnot, as well as some of the other environmental options that you have. But yeah, that's about it for the static props and really the rest of the props. Like I said, steps and a couple of the other things, if I can figure out how they ended up making the changes to them, I will end up making another video on that, covering that once again. But I'd like to thank you again for watching the video. The next video, I'll be going over the enemies more than anything, which will take up a video all in of itself. So I hope you found this video helpful once again, and thank you for watching, and have a nice day.